当时他的船上就88人，达伽马就是160人，麦哲伦是260多人。哥伦布是3艘船，达伽马是14艘船，麦哲伦是5艘船。我要说的是，郑和下乡是7次，他的人数是达到27000多人。文献上记载的，他的吨位是1万多，有着跟达伽马的最大的船比是120倍，就是从造船的技术、吨位和规模来说，这是世界上是首屈一指的，西方航海家是没办法相比的。
When Zheng He's fleet of 317 ships carrying 27,000 men sailed out into the sea, it was the beginning of the greatest voyage ever undertaken in Chinese history, and it would be commonly referred to by later generations as Zheng He's voyages into the western seas. Zheng He was to make many more voyages. While he was on his 5th seagoing journey, far away in Beijing, the new royal palace being built along the south-north central line of the city in a highly symmetrical manner was just beginning to reveal itself. The central line, which ran across the entire city, highlighted the city's landmarks in a way that was stately, orderly, grand, and harmonious to the eye.
站在景山的顶上，看脚下的紫禁城是一片金色的琉璃瓦的海洋，它的下面呢是从它的屋身的部分呢都是红色的，从它脚下部分呢基本是白色和灰色的，就是以汉白玉石为主要的这种艺术特色。这个黄、红、白这3种色彩呢是一高度的统一，每一个金色的下边和红色的中间都是建筑彩画。建筑彩画呢，在明清时期呢已经完全是以这个青绿色冷色调在黄和红之间起到了非常非常好的一种协调作用，把2种大的色块给它打破了，打破成一个非常生动的这种色彩。
The dark red palace walls and the golden yellow tiles of its roofs set the Forbidden City apart from all the other buildings around it. Building the Forbidden City involved countless bricks, tiles and other construction materials, and all were made according to highly complicated processes, and this is to say nothing of the numerous decorative carvings. Behind the hall named Baohe, which means preserving harmony, lies the largest flight of stone steps carved out of a single piece of stone. Four very impressive-looking octagonal towers were built to guard the corners of the Forbidden City. Each tower has 9 beams, 18 pillars, 72 ridges, and 1,500 other parts. No seams are visible. All the parts were joined using mortise and tenon construction techniques. In every sense, these towers are a marvel.
Well, 2 years before the magnificent Forbidden City was completed, the Ming government made another important decision that would reinforce Beijing's position as the new capital. A great bell would be forged as a symbol of Beijing's newfound prosperity.
A Chinese saying goes, any great feat of history, whether civilian or military, is commemorated by the construction of a huge bell. And so it was in the year 1418, when the ruler of the Ming Dynasty, who had decided to move his capital from Nanjing to Beijing, issued instructions for the making of a huge bell to commemorate his exploits. In March of 1418, master bell makers were called to Beijing, and there they learned of the specifications the government had set for the new bell. They were unbelievable. The bell was to be 6.94 meters tall, 3.3 meters wide at the mouth, and weigh 46.5 tons. Producing such a massive bell even today would be an extraordinary undertaking. Yet the master craftsman decided to make the bell using traditional clay mold techniques. In this traditional technique, a large pit is made in the ground to which is added a mound of clay in the desired shape. A layer of very fine clay is added to this mound so it can receive fine paper on which Buddhist sutras have been written. The paper is applied upside down to imprint the characters on the paper onto the layer of clay. When the characters in intaglio on the clay are done, the clay is fired to create the inner layer of a mold. This will later be joined by yet more layers.
像永乐大宗使用的是泥形铸造，这种泥形铸造到明朝的时候，已经至少是延续了3000多年了。最晚吧，从龙山文化史开始到夏代夏商周，差不多所有的青铜器都是用泥形铸造的。因此，永乐大宗所以能够很成功的用泥形铸造的钟，它是有深厚的技术积淀的。这种技术传统一代一代传下来，到明朝仍然是处于世界的巅峰。
In theory, the creation of a huge bell necessitated a huge furnace, but at the time, there was no furnace large enough to hold more than 50 tons of molten bronze. The only solution was to have dozens of smaller furnaces working in unison. The molten bronze from these furnaces had to be released into the mold in turn, and the process had to be completed in one go. There was no room for error, either in timing or in furnace temperature. One of the purposes of moving the capital from Nanjing to Beijing was to consolidate defenses in the north. China's north was located in the middle of two very different civilizations, one of which was agricultural, the other nomadic. All 5,000 kilometers of the Great Wall were constructed with this problem in mind. The Great Wall was high, incredibly long and very solid, being built of massive slabs of stone. All the way from its eastern end to its western end, the wall had passes, lookout stands and beacon towers, thousands of them. Everything about it, its appearance, layout and aesthetic design, testified to a maximum input of human effort and resources. Construction on the Great Wall had begun 2,000 years before during the spring and autumn and warring states periods, and work had continued on the wall right up until the time of the Ming Dynasty. It was a project unmatched by any other engineering project in terms of size, length, difficulty, and duration of time required to complete it. The engineering technology used in the construction of the Great Wall peaked during the Ming Dynasty, both in terms of the size of structure it could produce and the defense purposes for which it could be used. During the 28 years between 1405 and 1433, the fleet commanded by Zhang He made 7 voyages to Southeast Asia, the Indian Ocean, the Red Sea, and the eastern coast of the African continent. Chinese people of that time held the strong belief that the sky was round and the earth was square. This being the case, the possibility of suddenly falling into some abyss at the end of the world was naturally a concern. However, as worried as people were, Zhang He was still determined to reach the edge of the planet. Incredibly, the fleet was largely able to avoid the numerous submerged reefs and uncharted oceans, and managed to stay on course through the use of traditional compasses and astronomical knowledge accumulated in China over the ages. On board Zhang He's ships were navigators who were also charged with the responsibility of making, revising and recording the route the fleet had taken. This was in part to help facilitate a safe return, On the charts made by these navigators, we can see recorded in great detail the routes taken by the fleet. Included are directions, water depth readings, reference objects, shallows, and submerged reefs. Thanks to the compasses and the guidance of the navigation chart, Zheng He's fleet arrived at its destinations, and the fleet never got lost at sea. The purpose of Zheng He's voyages was to show to the rest of the world the wealth and prosperity of the Ming Dynasty and its policy of maintaining good relations with its neighbours. As Zheng He's tactics involved presenting lavish gifts to prepare for his voyages, half of the country had been busy collecting together examples of the best things the nation produced. Porcelain and silk made up the greater proportion of these gifts.
郑和下西洋跟海外的贸易，实际上带过去的是3种产品，一种是物质产品，包括丝绸啊、瓷器啊等等；一种是制度的产品，中国的一些农历的，就是立凤关系的；第3种是精神产品，那就是中国的文学、语言等等影响。和风俗习惯、文化交流的这个也是不可缺少的部分。
Among the cargo Zheng He carried with him were more than 10,000 books. The idea was that by distributing them, he would spread the word abroad about Chinese civilization and traditional Confucian ideas. Well, hardly surprisingly, it was not the books that attracted the most interest in the places where Zheng He dropped anchor, but the beautiful silks and brocades he brought with him, not to mention the porcelain, whose exports reached unprecedented levels during the Ming Dynasty. Thank you for staying with us on New Frontiers, and join me again next time when we'll bring you more about Chinese civilization. I'm Ji Xiaojun from CCTV International. Goodbye.